The motion sensor chimed at 3:17 p.m. on a scorching Thursday afternoon in July. David Richardson, a 42-year-old software engineer who worked remotely from his home office, glanced at his security app and felt his jaw tighten. There they were again. 5 teenagers climbing over his 6-foot privacy fence like it was a playground obstacle course, heading straight for his saltwater pool. 3 months. 3 months of coming home to find wet footprints on his deck, empty soda cans floating in the water, and his pool chemicals completely thrown off balance. 3 months of filing police reports that went nowhere, of confronting smirking kids who laughed in his face, of watching his peaceful backyard sanctuary become someone else's entertainment. But today was different. Today, David wasn't just documenting another violation. He was executing a plan that had taken 4 weeks of research, 3 consultations with his lawyer, and 1 very strategic conversation with a licensed electrician. What those kids didn't know was that the quiet tech professional they'd been tormenting had spent years in cybersecurity, tracking down people who thought they were untraceable, and he'd just finished tracing every single one of them. Before we dive into how David turned his pool from a free-for-all into a lesson these teens would never forget, if you love stories where entitled trespassers finally face real consequences and patient people reach their breaking point in the most satisfying ways, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see exactly how this unfolds. This is a story in 3 parts. The violation that transformed a peaceful professional into someone willing to fight back. The confrontation where 5 cocky teenagers realized they'd picked the wrong house. And the resolution where justice came not from the system that failed him, but from his own calculated response. In the first part, you'll feel David's frustration build over 12 weeks of escalating disrespect. You'll see how a man who believed in doing things the right way watched that faith crumble with each dismissive police response, each mocking laugh from kids who thought they were untouchable. You'll understand the exact moment when something inside him shifted, when patience transformed into determination, and when he decided that if the system wouldn't protect his property, he'd find another way. In the second part, you'll witness the confrontation that changed everything. The moment David stepped out of his house with a folder full of information that made 5 confident teenagers go pale. The revelation that he knew not just their names, but their parents' names, their addresses, their schools, and exactly what consequences awaited them. You'll see power shift in real time as the kids who thought they owned his pool realized they'd been swimming in dangerous waters all along. In the third part, you'll discover how David's carefully planned resolution unfolded, how his unexpected solution sent a message that echoed far beyond those 5 teenagers, how one man's refusal to stay a victim transformed not just his own property, but set a precedent that rippled through the entire neighborhood, and how sometimes the most effective justice isn't what you expect. Here's exactly how it happened. David Richardson had moved into the suburban Sacramento home 2 years earlier, right after his divorce finalized. The house represented a fresh start, a place where he could rebuild his life in peace. The backyard had sold him immediately. A 1/4 acre with mature oak trees, professionally landscaped gardens, and a stunning 20 by 40-foot saltwater pool with integrated lighting and a waterfall feature. He'd spent $30,000 over his first year there upgrading the pool system, installing new filtration, adding heating, and creating what he considered his personal oasis. As someone who worked 12-hour days staring at computer screens hunting security vulnerabilities for Fortune 500 companies, that pool was his therapy. Every evening after work, he'd swim 50 laps, feeling tension dissolve with each stroke. The violations started innocently enough in early April. David had worked late into the night on a critical security audit and slept past his usual 6 a.m. alarm. When he finally went outside around 9 to skim leaves, he noticed wet footprints on the deck that weren't his. The gate was locked, but the footprints led to the fence. Someone had been in his pool. He checked the security camera footage and saw 3 teenagers, around 16 or 17 years old, had climbed his fence around midnight, swam for 20 minutes, then left. David felt violated but tried to rationalize it. Maybe they didn't realize someone lived here. Maybe they thought the house was vacant. He decided to let it go, assuming it was a one-time thing. He even convinced himself it was sort of flattering that his pool looked inviting enough for kids to want to use it. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon when David had driven to his parents' house 3 hours away for his mother's birthday, he got another motion alert. This time, 5 teenagers. They'd brought pool floats, a cooler, and a Bluetooth speaker. The camera footage showed them cannonballing off his deck, throwing his carefully arranged pool furniture into the water and leaving trash everywhere. When David returned Sunday evening, his pristine backyard looked like a frat party aftermath. Beer cans floated in the pool despite California's age restrictions. His expensive teak loungers had water damage. Someone had carved initials into his wooden fence. The water chemistry was so disrupted from sunscreen and who knows what else that he had to spend $200 on chemicals to rebalance it. This wasn't an innocent mistake anymore. This was deliberate disrespect. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in early June. David had been fighting a migraine all day and finished work early, planning to swim and relax. When he stepped into his backyard at 4 p.m., he found 7 teenagers in his pool. Not midnight. Not when he was gone. 4 in the afternoon while he was home. They'd brought pizza, set up speakers at full volume, and were having what appeared to be a full pool party. When David asked them to leave, a blonde girl in a bikini laughed and said, "Chill out, old man. It's just water." A muscular teen with a tribal tattoo added, "What are you gonna do, call the authorities? They don't care about sharing." David's hands shook as he pulled out his phone. "Leave now or I'm calling the police." They laughed harder, took their time gathering their things, and one kid deliberately emptied his soda into the pool before vaulting the fence. The message was clear. They didn't respect him, didn't fear consequences, and planned to keep coming back. David called the police that evening. Officer Morrison arrived 40 minutes later, took a report, and delivered the response David was learning to expect. "Look, Mr. Richardson, without catching them in the act and identifying them, there's not much we can do. It's technically trespassing, but it's misdemeanor level. Even if we found them, it'd be citations at most. Best advice? Get a better fence. Maybe drain the pool for the summer." David felt something inside him crack. He'd followed the rules his whole life, believed the system worked, trusted that doing things the proper way brought results. But the system had just told him his only option was to surrender his own property. That night, David stopped being the person who waited for others to solve his problems. He opened his laptop and did what he did best: investigate. He pulled up every second of security footage from the past 3 months, isolated the clearest facial shots, and began searching. Social media made it almost too easy. He found the blonde girl first. Ashley Winters, 17, daughter of a prominent real estate attorney. She'd posted Instagram photos from his pool tagged with "secret spot." From her tagged friends, he identified the others: Marcus Chen, 16, son of 2 surgeons; Tyler Davidson, 18, whose father owned 3 car dealerships; Emma Rodriguez, 17, whose mother was a city council member; and Jake Morrison, 17, whose last name made David's blood run cold, the son of Officer Morrison, the same cop who'd told him there was nothing he could do. David spent the next 3 weeks planning. He consulted with his own attorney, who confirmed what he could and couldn't legally do. He researched California trespassing laws, property rights, and parental liability statutes. He documented every instance of trespassing with timestamps, calculated property damage, and prepared a comprehensive file on each teenager. And then he made a phone call to an electrician friend who specialized in security systems. What David had in mind wasn't technically an electric fence for keeping people out. It was something far more creative and entirely legal. If they wanted to keep coming back, he'd make sure their next visit was unforgettable. On July 18th, everything was ready. David positioned himself in his home office with a clear view of the backyard, his phone recording, and his meticulously prepared files on the desk. At 3:15 p.m., right on schedule based on 3 months of pattern analysis, he heard voices at his fence. The same 5 regulars: Ashley, Marcus, Tyler, Emma, and Jake. They climbed over laughing, already stripped down to swimsuits, racing each other to the pool edge. Marcus did a running start for a cannonball. Tyler was setting up the Bluetooth speaker. Ashley was pulling out her phone for what David assumed would be more Instagram posts from his property. Emma was already in the shallow end. Jake was the last one over the fence, carrying a 6-pack of energy drinks. David stepped through his sliding glass door onto the deck. The effect was immediate. The music stopped. Marcus froze mid-stride. Tyler's hand went to his chest like he'd been startled. Ashley's smile disappeared. Emma backed up in the water. Jake's eyes went wide with something that looked like panic. David wasn't the uncomfortable middle-aged man they'd dismissed before. He stood calmly, dressed in dark jeans and a button-down despite the heat, holding a leather portfolio folder. His expression was neutral, controlled, and somehow more intimidating than anger would have been. "Good afternoon," David said evenly. "I'm glad you could all make it. We have some things to discuss." Ashley recovered first, attempting her usual confidence. "Look, we were just—" Ashley Marie Winters, 17 years old, residing at 4782 Oakmont Drive. David opened the folder, reading from printed pages. Daughter of Richard and Patricia Winters. Richard is a partner at Winters, Chen and Rodriguez, specializing in civil litigation. Patricia is a pediatrician at Mercy General. You attend Lincoln High School, where you're a junior with a 3.4 GPA and captain of the swim team. Your college applications went out last month. Stanford, UCLA, USC, all schools that take character very seriously. He looked up from the page. Should I continue? Ashley's face had gone white. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. David turned to the next teenager, his voice still eerily calm. Marcus Chen, 16, 4791 Oakmont Drive. Parents are both cardiovascular surgeons at UC Davis Medical Center. You're aiming for pre-med yourself, already taking AP Biology and Chemistry. You have a partial scholarship offer from Berkeley, pending your senior year performance and, quote, demonstration of ethical character and community responsibility. That's directly from their conditional acceptance letter, isn't it, Marcus? Marcus looked like he might be experiencing his first real fear. How do you— Tyler James Davidson, 18 years old, 892 Maple Grove Lane. David didn't wait for the question to finish. Your father is Thomas Davidson, owner of Davidson Auto Group. You just graduated Lincoln High 6 weeks ago, and you're supposed to start at Sacramento State in August on your father's. Promised that you'd matured and learned responsibility after that. Incident with the principal's car last year. The incident your father paid $15,000 to make go away. The one that's not supposed to be on your record as long as you stay out of trouble for 1 year. We're at month 9 of that probationary period, Tyler. Tyler's confident posture had completely collapsed. His hands were shaking. Emma Sophia Rodriguez, 17, 4805 Oakmont Drive. Your mother, Maria Rodriguez, serves on the city council. She's running for re-election this November on a platform of, and I'm quoting her campaign website, family values, respect for property rights, and teaching our youth accountability. Your older sister just finished her first year at West Point. Your mother talks about both her daughters constantly in campaign speeches. How proud she is. How well raised you are. Emma had started crying, mascara running down her face. David turned to the last teenager, and his voice dropped even lower. And Jacob Morrison, 17 years old, 3847 Riverside Drive, son of Officer Michael Morrison and Nancy Morrison. Your father has been with the Sacramento Police Department for 22 years. Your mother is a middle school vice principal. You have 2 younger brothers who look up to you. Your father told me personally when I filed my police report 4 weeks ago that he couldn't do anything about teenagers using someone's pool without permission. Interesting that he didn't mention his own son was one of those teenagers. Jake looked physically ill. Mr. Richardson, I swear I didn't know my dad came here. You didn't think there would be consequences, David finished. None of you did. You thought I was just some lonely guy who'd complain but couldn't do anything. You thought because I worked from home and kept to myself that I was weak, that I'd just accept that my property was your entertainment. He closed the folder. You were wrong. David let the silence stretch for 10 long seconds. Then he continued. Here's what's going to happen. You have 2 options, and you have exactly 30 seconds to choose. Option 1, I make 5 phone calls right now. Your parents, every single one of them, get copies of this folder. Inside is security footage with timestamps and date stamps showing 3 months of repeated trespassing. Screenshots of Instagram posts where you've tagged this location, bragged about your secret pool, and posted photos of yourselves on my property. A full accounting of property damage totaling $4,800. Documentation that you knew this was private property because I confronted you personally and you continued anyway. I then file formal charges, which in California allows me to pursue civil damages separately from any criminal trespassing citations. Tyler, you violate your probation. Marcus, your Berkeley offer gets reviewed. Ashley, your college applications include a police report. Emma, your mother's opponent in the election gets a very interesting story about her daughter's activities. Jake, your father, faces an ethics review for failing to act on a report involving his own son. The teenagers stood frozen. David pulled out his phone. Option 2, you make this right. Starting tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., you report here to my house. You spend the next 3 consecutive days doing exactly what I tell you. You repair my fence. You professionally clean this pool and restore the chemistry. I'll supervise and you'll pay for all chemicals and testing. You restore my deck and furniture to pristine condition. You work 8-hour days, all 5 of you, until every single bit of damage you've caused is fixed. You don't complain, you don't cut corners, you show up on time, and you work until I'm satisfied. At the end of those 3 days, if you've completed everything to my standards and I believe you've actually learned something, this folder gets shredded. No parents called, no charges filed, no permanent consequences. But if you mess up, if you're late, if you do sloppy work, if you give me attitude, or if I ever see any of you within 100 feet of my property again, Ashley found her voice, though it trembled. That's not legal. You can't make us work for you. David smiled, and it wasn't friendly. I'm not making you do anything. I'm offering you a choice between facing the legal and social consequences of your actions or volunteering your time to repair the damage you caused. You're absolutely free to choose option 1. In fact, let me dial the first number right now. Wait! Marcus stepped forward, his pre-med future flashing before his eyes. We'll do it. We'll fix everything. David looked at each of them in turn. I need to hear it from all of you. Emma? Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. I'll be here. Jake? Jake's voice was barely a whisper. 7 a.m., I'll be here. Tyler? Yes, I'll do it. Ashley? The blonde girl who'd called him old man and laughed in his face looked at the ground. I'll come. David tucked his phone away. Outstanding. 7 a.m. tomorrow. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty. Bring work gloves. I'll provide tools and materials, but the labor is yours. And one more thing. He pulled out a document from the folder. Each of you will sign this liability waiver acknowledging you're voluntarily performing community restitution for trespassing on my property. It protects me legally and ensures you can't claim later that I forced you. Sign now, or I make the phone calls." One by one, with shaking hands, they signed. When Jake finished the last signature on the page, David collected the document. "Get off my property." 7 a.m. Don't be late." They climbed the fence in silence, none of the laughing or music or bravado from before. David watched them go, then allowed himself a smile for the first time in 3 months. The tech professional who'd spent years tracking down hackers and security threats had just traced 5 entitled teenagers who thought they were untraceable. And tomorrow, the real lesson would begin. The next morning, Friday at 6:58 a.m., all 5 teenagers arrived at David's front door. They looked exhausted despite the early hour, probably from anxiety rather than lack of sleep. David had his coffee waiting and a detailed task list printed out. No pleasantries. He walked them to the backyard and started delegating. Marcus and Jake got fence repair duty. 3 sections had damage from climbing, including the area with carved initials. David handed them sanders, wood filler, sealant, and showed them YouTube tutorials on proper fence restoration. "I want this fence looking better than the day I installed it," he told them. "Sand every rough spot. Fill every crack. 2 coats of sealant. If I see a single imperfection, you start over." Tyler and Emma got pool duty. David had deliberately let the chemistry get worse after their last visit, allowing algae to start forming and debris to accumulate. "Skim every leaf. Scrub every wall. Vacuum the bottom. Then we test chemistry and you adjust it until it's perfect. The chemical calculator is here. The testing kit is here. Figure it out." He handed them the supplies and a laminated instruction sheet. Ashley got deck and furniture duty. Every lounger needed sanding and re-oiling. The deck itself needed a full pressure washing and restaining. The pressure washer is in the shed. Instructions are on the side. Don't damage my wood. If you gouge the deck, you're replacing boards. By 9 a.m., all 5 teenagers were sweating, frustrated, and starting to realize how much work they'd created. David sat in a shaded chair with his laptop, working remotely while supervising. Occasionally, he'd call out corrections. "Marcus, you missed a spot." "Sand it again." "Emma, that pH is still off. Retest." "Ashley, you're going too fast with that pressure washer. Slow down or you'll damage the wood." At 11 a.m., David ordered pizza for lunch, but made them eat outside in the heat while he ate in air conditioning. It wasn't cruelty. It was the natural consequence of the situation they'd created. At 1 p.m., Ashley broke down crying from exhaustion and frustration with the pressure washer. David didn't comfort her. He just said, "You have 3 more hours. Figure it out." By 3 p.m., Tyler confronted him, clearly struggling with his own privileged background where money fixed problems. "Mr. Richardson, what if we just paid you? Like, name a price. We'll pool our money and pay for professionals to fix this." David looked up from his laptop. "That's option 1, Tyler. Call your parents, explain what you did, ask them for money to fix it." "We can do that right now," Tyler deflated. "No, I'll keep working." At 5 p.m., David inspected their work. The fence still had rough patches. The pool chemistry was closer but not perfect. The deck had streaks. "Tomorrow, 7 a.m., same schedule." "Fix what I've marked." "You're getting better, but we're not done." They left exhausted, humbled, and resentful, but they showed up Saturday morning at 6:55 a.m. Day 2 was when the real shift happened. Around 10 a.m., a silver Lexus pulled into David's driveway. Emma's mother, city councilwoman Maria Rodriguez, stepped out looking furious. She'd apparently driven past and seen her daughter working in someone's yard. Emma went pale. "Mom, I can explain." "Mrs. Rodriguez," David intercepted smoothly, walking to meet her. "Your daughter and her friends have been trespassing on my property repeatedly for 3 months. I have comprehensive documentation." He handed her a USB drive from his pocket. He'd prepared for this possibility. Rather than filing charges and destroying their futures, I offered them the opportunity to voluntarily repair the damage they caused. Emma chose this option to avoid legal and social consequences. She signed a liability waiver acknowledging she's here voluntarily. If you'd prefer, we can proceed with option 1 instead. I can file charges this afternoon. Maria took the USB drive and her phone, stepping away to review the footage. David heard her sharp intake of breath as she watched her daughter repeatedly climbing his fence, saw the Instagram posts, read his damage accounting. When she walked back, her expression had completely changed. She turned to Emma. "This is what you've been doing when you said you were studying at Ashley's?" For 3 months, Emma couldn't meet her mother's eyes. "Mom, I'm sorry. You're going to finish this work," Maria said coldly. "All 3 days." David nodded. "I appreciate that, Mrs. Rodriguez." After Maria left, the other 4 teenagers worked with noticeably more urgency. The message was clear. Their parents finding out was somehow worse than the labor. By the end of day 2, the fence looked pristine. The pool was crystal clear with perfect chemistry, and the deck was half finished. Sunday, day 3, they arrived at 6:50 a.m. without being reminded. The work wrapped up by 2 p.m. Sunday. David did his final inspection, checking every detail with the thoroughness of someone who'd been disrespected for months. The fence was flawless, better than before. The pool sparkled, chemistry perfectly balanced. The deck and furniture looked professionally restored. He made them wait while he checked everything twice, then finally nodded. "Acceptable," he said. The teenagers sagged with relief. David pulled out 5 copies of the signed liability waiver, and in front of them, fed each page into a shredder. The sound of paper being destroyed was the sweetest thing they'd heard in 3 days. "We're done. The folder is gone. But understand this." He looked at each of them in turn. "You spent 3 months treating my home like your personal playground. You laughed when I asked you to stop. You mocked me when I tried to handle this reasonably. You thought there would be no consequences because you're young and your parents have money and connections. You were wrong. You got lucky that I'm patient enough to offer you this option instead of option 1. But that patience is used up. If I see any of you near my property again, if I hear you've done this to anyone else, if you cause trouble in this neighborhood, that folder comes back out. And this time I make those phone calls without offering a choice. Do you understand?" 5 voices, quiet and genuinely humbled now, responded. "Yes, sir." "Then get out of my sight." They left quickly, no climbing the fence this time, but walking through the front yard gate David had finally opened for them. As Tyler passed, he paused. "Mr. Richardson, I'm sorry. I mean, really sorry. We were being," he struggled for the word, "entitled jerks. You didn't deserve that." David studied him for a moment. "You're right. I didn't. But you're 18 now, Tyler. Adult consequences start applying. Remember that." Tyler nodded and left. The next afternoon, Monday, David got an unexpected visitor. Officer Morrison appeared at his door looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Richardson, I need to apologize. My son told me what's been going on. I had no idea he was one of the kids when you filed that report. I should have investigated more thoroughly instead of brushing you off." David leaned against his doorframe, choosing his words carefully. "Your son spent 3 days learning about consequences and responsibility. He worked hard, and I think he actually got it. But you need to understand, when you told me there was nothing you could do, you taught me that the system doesn't always work, that I was on my own. That's a dangerous lesson to teach a citizen about their police force." Morrison flushed. "You're right. I failed you. I won't make excuses." He paused. "Jake told me what you said to them. About how they thought you were weak because you were patient. A lot of people could have handled this worse. You gave them a chance to learn instead of just punishing them. That took more strength than pressing charges would have." "I respect that," David nodded. "Tell Jake I hope the lesson sticks." After Morrison left, David finally allowed himself to relax. He walked to his backyard, his pristine, finally peaceful backyard, and looked at the pool that had caused 3 months of stress. The water sparkled in the late afternoon sun. No footprints on the deck. No trash, no uninvited guests. Just his property as it should be. He changed into swim trunks and dove in, the cool water washing away the last of his anger. He'd fought back against entitlement and disrespect, and he'd won without becoming the bad guy. 2 months later, on a September afternoon, David was swimming laps when his doorbell rang. He toweled off and answered to find Tyler standing there nervously. "Mr. Richardson, I just wanted to tell you I started college last week. I'm doing good, staying out of trouble, and..." He held out an envelope. "I talked to the other guys. We took up a collection. It's $500 for your time in trouble. We know it doesn't cover everything, but we wanted you to know we get it now. What we did was wrong." David took the envelope, genuinely surprised. "You didn't have to do this." "Yeah, we did. You could have ruined our lives. Instead, you taught us something our parents' money never did, that we're not special just because we have advantages. That actions matter. That respect matters." Tyler met his eyes. "Thank you for that." "I mean it." After Tyler left, David opened the envelope. Inside was $500 in cash and a note signed by all 5 of them. "We're sorry. We'll do better. Thank you for the second chance." David smiled and tucked it in his wallet. Then he returned to his pool, dove under the surface, and swam 50 perfect laps in absolute peace. The man who believed the system would protect him had learned it wouldn't. The man who thought patience meant weakness had proven it meant strength. And the teenagers who thought they were entitled to whatever they wanted had learned the most important lesson of all, that every action has a consequence. And some people are patient enough to make sure you face them. David Richardson had learned that sometimes justice doesn't come from a police report. Sometimes it comes from knowing exactly who wronged you, exactly what leverage you have, and exactly how to make them understand that respect isn't optional. And as he floated on his back in his pool under a clear Sacramento sky watching clouds drift past, he smiled. Because justice, whether delivered hot or cold, fast or slow, was equally satisfying, especially when it came with 3 days of hard labor and a lesson that would last a lifetime. Across the country in Charleston, South Carolina, retired Marine Colonel Patricia Hayes was tending her rose garden when a letter arrived from her neighborhood HOA. The demand was simple: remove her vegetable garden or face daily fines of $100. Patricia read the letter twice, then smiled. The same smile that had once preceded tactical operations in 3 combat zones. She pulled out her property deed, the original neighborhood bylaws from 1987, and her personal documentation showing she'd served on the HOA board that approved residential gardens before the current president tried to change the rules. The HOA president had no idea that the quiet widow he was trying to bully had a law degree, a Pentagon security clearance, and absolutely no patience for people who abused small amounts of power. Patricia picked up her phone and called her attorney. "It's time we reminded the HOA who actually owns these properties," she said quietly. The president was about to learn what happens when you threaten a decorated veteran who knows exactly how regulations work. But that's a story for another time.